Intimate hands zipped up her wedding dress. A voice then whispered in Maya's ear, "Your groom isn't coming today, darling, I am." She turned around and it was him, the man who disappeared 5 years ago. Her first love, who had now returned a billionaire. On her wedding day, telling her she wasn't getting married. Then Philip walked into the room and saw Damien, and went pale. "You should be dead."
And hello, I'm Rowan, the person behind the channel. And now on screen, you're seeing comments from Kurt and Judy. Thank you so much for commenting. And tell me something. Should a person marry another without loving them just to save their family financially?
Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Bridal Suite.
Your fiancé isn't coming.
The reflection in the mirror showed a perfect bride, and that was exactly the problem. Maya Hayes stared at the woman in the Vera Wang dress, staring back at her, her hair pulled into an elaborate updo that cost more than her monthly rent, and couldn't recognize herself. Her eyes didn't sparkle. She was beautiful, but empty, like a mannequin in an overpriced store window. Maya blinked, trying to find some trace of emotion in her own face, some spark of happiness a bride should have. "You don't have to do this." Sophie's voice cut through the heavy silence of the room, and Maya saw her younger sister's reflection approaching, wearing the royal blue bridesmaid dress that also hadn't been her choice. "There's still time to run. I swear I'll help you jump out the window if you need to. We'll improvise a rope with the sheets and escape." Maya almost laughed, because Sophie was serious, and for a second she considered the offer. But then she thought about the bills piled up on the kitchen table, the art gallery that barely paid its own expenses, the landlord's email threatening eviction, Sophie's college tuition due next week. "I have to, Soph," she said, and her voice came out steadier than expected. "The gallery is sinking, the rent is 3 months behind, your college tuition is killing me. Then I'll drop out of college. We'll sell the gallery, I don't know, we'll figure it out." Sophie grabbed her shoulders, forcing eye contact. "You can't marry someone just because he has money, that's insane." "Philip is a good man," Maya replied, repeating the mantra she'd been rehearsing for months, trying to convince herself as much as her sister. "He's rich, stable, respectable, he takes care of me, he's sensible." "Sensible isn't love," Sophie shot back, and Maya felt something tighten in her chest because it was too cruel a truth to ignore. "Love doesn't pay bills." The words came out automatic, bitter, and Maya brought her hand to the necklace she never took off, even after 5 years, a simple silver chain with a star pendant that Damien had given her on her birthday, saying she lit up his life like an entire constellation. She didn't know why she still wore it, why she couldn't take it off even knowing he had abandoned her without explanation, without goodbye, without anything but deafening silence that haunted her on every corner of the city where they used to walk together. Sophie sighed, defeated for now, and checked her wristwatch. "I'll check if everything's ready downstairs. The guests should be arriving." She kissed her sister's forehead, a maternal gesture despite being younger. "But Maya, if you change your mind, even if it's at the altar, even if it's after saying, 'Yes, I'll get you out of there,' sisters promise." When the door closed, Maya was alone with the reflection she didn't recognize and the weight of the dress that seemed to increase every second. She tried to reach the zipper on her back, which the stylist had left purposely partially open for last-minute adjustments, but her fingers slipped on the delicate fabric, and she couldn't pull it up alone. The ridiculousness of the situation almost made her laugh, being there about to get married, and unable to close her own wedding dress, as if the universe was screaming that something was wrong. Footsteps sounded behind her, firm on the thick carpet, and Maya felt relief. "Sophie, can you close the zipper for me? I can't reach it alone," and hands touched her exposed back, and Maya froze. They weren't feminine hands, delicate and small like Sophie's. They were large hands, warm, masculine, with calloused palms that slid across her skin, in a way that made every nerve ending wake up on alert. The zipper began to rise slowly, with the deliberation of someone who had all the time in the world, and she felt someone's breath too close to the nape of her neck, warming her skin in a way that shouldn't be possible, in a way that made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with the wedding that would happen in half an hour. Then came the voice, husky and intense, loaded with something between promise and threat. "Your fiancé isn't coming today, sweetheart. I am. Impossible. She was imagining things, finally going completely crazy after 5 years of trying to forget, 5 years convincing herself she had moved on, 5 years lying to herself every time she touched the necklace he had given her. Maya turned slowly, almost afraid of what she would find, and when her eyes finally focused on the man standing inches from her, her brain simply refused to process the information before her. Damian Reed was there, in the flesh, older and more dangerous than she remembered. The skinny 27-year-old boy had transformed into a man who looked like he'd been sculpted from marble and power, with broader shoulders under a suit that probably cost more than her dress, with a jawline marked by stubble that gave a slightly wild air to his elegant face. His dark brown hair was slightly longer, falling over his forehead, in a way she remembered brushing away with her fingers, and his entire body emanated an authority that didn't exist before, as if he had conquered the entire world and come back to lay it at her feet. But it was his eyes that destroyed her. Those storm-colored eyes, dark grey with silver streaks that she had seen in dreams and nightmares for the last 5 years, watched her with an intensity that made her knees weaken. Maya tried to form words, but her voice came out broken, incredulous, strangled. You're dead. Clearly I'm not. Damian took a step closer, invading her personal space until there was no more air between them, and his scent hit her like a punch to the stomach. Something expensive and masculine with notes of cedar and spices that made memories flood her mind brutally. Though I understand the confusion, disappearing for 5 years tends to create that impression in people. Damian, how? Maya was trembling, and she didn't know if it was from anger or relief or something more dangerous that pulsed between them like living electricity. You can't just show up after 5 years and just show up? Damian grabbed her chin between his fingers, forcing her to maintain eye contact, and his touch burned like red-hot iron. Maya, I never left you. I was taken from you, and I spent 5 years building an empire, destroying enemies, all to come back. For you, always for you. That doesn't make any sense. She tried to pull away, but she was trapped between him and the antique vanity, and his body blocked any escape route. You disappeared without a word, without explanation, without anything, and now you show up on my wedding day thinking you can... You're not marrying Philip Ashton. His voice came out low, dangerous, definitive. Over my dead body. Maya opened her mouth to respond, to scream, to demand explanations, but the door exploded open with force that made the frame shake. Philip Ashton entered with the urgency of someone looking for a missing bride, immaculate in a tuxedo that matched her dress in a rehearsed and soulless way. He froze, seeing Damian holding Maya, and the color drained from his face like water down an open drain. Who the hell are you? Philip advanced with the indignation of a man accustomed to having total control of the situation, but stopped abruptly when Damian turned to face him. Damian blocked Maya with his own body, a gesture both protective and possessive, and smiled in a way that had absolutely nothing friendly about it. It was the smile of a predator that had just found the perfect prey. Damian Reed. Pleasure to finally meet you personally, Philip. He paused, letting the name hang in the air like a bomb about to explode. I came to get my bride. The silence that fell over the room was so heavy that Maya could feel the weight of it on her shoulders. Philip went pale, as white as the tie he was wearing, and took an involuntary step back. His eyes widened in recognition and something that looked a lot like pure fear. Reed. His voice came out strangled, disbelieving. You should be dead? Damian tilted his head, and the smile became sharper, more dangerous, like a blade hidden in silk. Yes, I know. Plans changed. Surprise. Maya looked between the two men, confusion mixing with the rage boiling in her chest. Wait, Philip, you know Damian? Her voice went up an octave, hysteria beginning to take hold. How do you know Damian? Philip opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish out of water. Sweat began to form on his forehead, staining the makeup artist had applied so carefully. Maya, darling, it's complicated. I can explain. Then explain. Maya pulled away from Damian, walked around the vanity, and stood in the center of the room, looking at the two men as if she were seeing ghosts. Explain how you know the man who disappeared from my life 5 years ago. Explain now. Damien looked at Maya, and there was pain in his eyes, deep and old pain. Then he turned to Philip, and all emotion disappeared, replaced by glacial coldness. Come with me, Maya, now. I'll explain everything, but not here. I'm not going anywhere until someone tells me what's going on. Maya felt tears burning in her eyes, frustration and confusion mixing into a toxic cocktail. Damien, you disappeared for 5 years. 5, and now you show up and think I can just... Noise exploded from the hallway. Loud voices, confused. Someone shouting something about the groom not being in position. Running footsteps on the stairs. Chaos was beginning to spread through the mansion like fire in a dry forest. The door was pushed open again, and Sophie appeared breathless, her hair from the updo already beginning to come loose. Maya, the guests are noticing something's wrong. Philip didn't show up for the ceremony and people are looking for you guys, and... She stopped talking when she saw Philip standing near the door. Wait, he's here. Why aren't you downstairs waiting at the... Sophie's eyes slid to the other man in the room, the tall and imposing man who blocked Maya's view like a personal bodyguard. She blinked once, twice. The color disappeared from her face too, and for a moment Maya thought her sister was going to faint right there. Oh my God! Sophie brought her hand to her mouth, her voice coming out in a high-pitched squeak that would have been comical in any other situation. Oh my God, Damien, read... Hi, Sophie. Damien waved his hand, too casual for the absurd situation. Missed you. Love the dress. You're alive. Sophie looked at Maya, then at Damien, then at Philip, who looked like he wanted to merge with the wall. How? When? What's going on here? Good question. Maya crossed her arms over her chest, feeling the wedding dress squeeze claustrophobically. Philip was about to explain how he knows my ex-boyfriend, who supposedly disappeared from the face of the earth. Philip was visibly sweating now, looking at the door like a cornered animal looking for an exit. Maya, you don't understand. I had no choice. My father... Your father? Damien's voice came out like a whip, sharp and icy. You're really going to blame Daddy, Philip? Have the guts at least to own your part? More voices in the hallway. More footsteps. Someone knocked on the door. Mr. Ashton, the ceremony should have started 10 minutes ago. The guests are getting impatient. The situation was too absurd to be real. Maya Hayes was there, in the bridal suite of the Ashton mansion, wearing a wedding dress that cost a fortune, with the groom sweating and pale near the door, her younger sister in a state of shock, and the ex-boyfriend she thought was dead standing in the middle of the room as if he had every right to be there. The wedding that was supposed to be the solution to all her problems, the wedding that was supposed to bring stability and security, the wedding that was supposed to be the sensible and adult beginning of her life, was about to explode spectacularly, and for the first time in months, Maya felt something besides emptiness and resignation. She felt anger. She felt confusion. She felt dangerous hope igniting in her chest, like a flame she had tried to extinguish for 5 whole years. And the wedding? The wedding was about to become the biggest disaster high society would witness in decades.
Man, this wedding is going to be the talk of the town, and you won't want to miss the consequences.
Chapter 2. The Escape and Revelations.
Come with me. Now.
The tension in the room was so thick that Maya could feel the heavy air in her lungs. Philip was pale as a ghost, backing toward the door as if Damien were going to explode at any moment, and maybe he really was judging by the way his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "You shouldn't be here," Philip managed to say, his voice trembling slightly. "My father. Your father?" Maya turned to her fiancé with speed that made the dress swirl around her legs. "Philip, you know Damien? How the hell do you know Damien?" Damien laughed, and the sound had absolutely nothing humorous about it. It was a sharp and bitter laugh that sent chills up Maya's spine. "Oh, he knows me very well. Don't you, Philip? You want to tell her, or should I?" The sweat was visible on Philip's forehead now, staining the professional makeup and destroying the image of perfection he cultivated so carefully. "Damien, look. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't know my father was going to—" "Liar!" The word came out like a gunshot from Damien, who took a step toward Philip, making the man practically shrink against the wall. "You knew exactly what he was going to do. You were there, you coward." You held the warehouse door while your father threatened me. Maya felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Someone explain to me what's going on. Her voice echoed through the room, hysterical and desperate. Warehouse? Threats? What the hell are you talking about? Voices began to approach from the hallway, louder now, more urgent. Someone knocked on the door again. Mr. Ashton, Miss Hayes, the ceremony should have started. The guests are getting very impatient. Damien looked at the door, then at Maya, and something changed in his eyes. The anger gave way to something softer, more urgent. He approached and took her hand, fingers intertwining with hers with a familiarity that shouldn't exist after 5 years, but that felt like the most natural thing in the world. I'll explain everything, but not here. Do you trust me? You disappeared for 5 years, Maya shouted, but didn't pull her hand back, and they both noticed that fact. Maya. Damien squeezed her fingers, his voice lowering to an intimate tone that made her remember lazy Sunday mornings and promises whispered in the dark. Please give me an hour. 1 hour to explain everything, to tell you the whole truth you deserve to know. After that, if you still want to marry him. He looked at Philip with pure contempt. I'll leave. Forever this time, I promise. Maya, go. Sophie approached, taking her sister's other hand. You deserve answers. And honestly, I always hated this wedding anyway. Sophie. Maya looked shocked at her sister. Sorry, not sorry. Sophie shrugged. You deserve the truth, go. Philip tried to recover, straightening his shoulders and assuming a posture of authority he clearly didn't feel. Maya, darling, you can't just leave with this man. He's dangerous, my father will— Your father, Damien interrupted, his voice coming out cold as ice, is exactly the reason for everything. And if he shows up here now, I swear to God that— The door burst open forcefully, slamming against the wall with a crash that made everyone jump. Victor Ashton entered the room like a storm, a dominant and imposing presence that filled the space with the authority of decades of power and money. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered even at 60, with greying hair combed back and a suit that probably cost more than a luxury car. But when his eyes landed on Damien, when he actually saw who was standing in the middle of the bridal suite, Victor Ashton froze. And for the first time in her life, Maya saw genuine fear in the eyes of someone from the Ashton family. You. The word came out as a strangled whisper. Impossible. Damien smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf that found a lost lamb in the woods. Surprise, Victor. Thought you'd buried me. Miscalculation on your part. Victor looked at Philip with fury that made his son recoil even further. You let him in? How did he get past security? How did he get here? I didn't know that. Philip was stuttering, pathetic, and Maya felt nauseous, realizing this was the man she almost married. Useless, Victor growled, and the mask of refined gentleman fell away, revealing something cruel and dangerous underneath. He pulled his cell phone from the inside pocket of his jacket. Security, we have an intruder in the bridal suite. I need you to— Damien moved with speed Maya could barely follow. In 3 steps he crossed the room, yanked the phone from Victor's hand, and threw the device out the open window. Then, before anyone could react, he grabbed Victor by the lapel of his expensive suit, bringing the older man close with force that made Victor's eyes widen. You destroyed my life, Damien said, his voice low and deadly. Almost killed me, ripped me away from the woman I love and thought you'd get away with it. Thought you'd make her marry your psychopath son and everything would be fine. Damien, let go, Maya screamed, frightened by the violence in his posture, by the way his muscles were tense under the expensive suit. Let him go now. Damien looked at her, and when he saw the fear in Maya's eyes, something in him broke. He released Victor with a shove that made the man stumble, backing away with his hands raised in surrender. You're right, he said, his voice coming out hoarse. Not like this, not in front of you. He took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration that Maya remembered all too well. Maya, I'm leaving now. Voluntarily and peacefully. But if you want the truth, the whole truth about Philip, about Victor, about why I disappeared and how these two are connected to everything. He pulled a pen from his pocket, grabbed a piece of paper from the coffee table, and wrote an address in handwriting she recognized. He placed the paper in her hand, his fingers lingering on the touch longer than necessary. Today, still in your wedding dress if you want, I don't care. But come, please. He gave one last look at Victor, and there was a dangerous promise there. This isn't over. Not even close to over. Then Damien Reed left the room with the same confidence with which he had entered, leaving heavy and suffocating silence in his wake. Maya could hear his footsteps going down the stairs, hear the confused murmur of the guests when he passed through the hall, and then the sound of the front door closing. She looked at the paper in her hand, then looked at Philip, who was red and sweating, unable to maintain eye contact with her. Then looked at Victor, who was furious, but there was also something else there, something that looked a lot like poorly disguised fear. "Philip!" Her voice came out calm, too calm, the calm of a hurricane about to break. "What did Damien mean by 'you were there'?" "Maya, darling, this is complicated. There are many layers, and uncomplicate it." She practically growled the word. Philip exchanged a desperate look with his father, seeking salvation that clearly wouldn't come. Victor took a step forward, taking control of the situation with the authority he was accustomed to exercising. "Miss Hayes, this man is a criminal, dangerous, unstable. Everything he says are elaborate lies to—" "He was wearing the necklace," Maya interrupted, and her voice broke on the last word. "The silver necklace I gave him 5 years ago. He's still wearing it. I saw it when he leaned in, it gleamed against his shirt." Tears began to burn in her eyes. 5 years, and he's still wearing the necklace I gave him. Sophie approached and took her sister's hand, a gesture of solidarity and support. Maya turned to Philip, studying his face with attention she'd never given before. "Do you love me?" Philip hesitated, and in that hesitation, in that second of silence that stretched like an eternity, Maya had all the answers she needed. You're great company, Maya. We're compatible on so many levels. Our families complement each other. We have similar interests. You don't love me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "Love is overrated," Philip said, and at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "What we have is better. Solid partnership, mutual respect. Stable future built on rational foundations instead of fleeting emotion." "You don't love me," Maya repeated, and something broke inside her, something that had been cracking for months, but finally shattered. She looked around the luxurious room, at the expensive dress she wore, at the perfect life she was about to have, and saw it all for what it really was, a gilded cage, empty, cold, lifeless. "Sophie," she said, her voice firm for the first time in months, "help me get this dress off." "Maya, don't be hasty," Philip began. "Hasty?" Maya turned to him, and there was something wild in her eyes now. "Hasty? I was about to marry a man who doesn't love me, who apparently knew my ex-boyfriend and never, not once, thought it was relevant to mention that fact, whose father apparently tried to kill Damien." "Nobody said anything about killing," Victor protested, but didn't sound convincing. "Don't you think," Maya continued, her voice rising in volume and hysteria, "that I'm being hasty?" She went to Sophie, turning her back so her sister could access the zipper. "Get this dress off now." 30 minutes later, Maya was in worn jeans and a simple cotton blouse, her hair still pulled up in the elaborate updo that now seemed ridiculous with casual clothes. She held the paper with Damien's address like it was a treasure map or a bomb about to explode. She didn't quite know which. "I'm going with you," Sophie said, already grabbing her own purse. "No." Maya shook her head. "I need to do this alone." She hugged her sister, squeezing tight. "If I'm not back in 3 hours, I'll send the police, the FBI, the National Guard, and probably the army too." Sophie squeezed back. "I know exactly where you'll be." Maya left the room without looking back, without giving Philip or Victor one last chance to try to convince her otherwise. She went down the stairs of the Ashton mansion for the last time, crossed the marble hall, where she should have walked as a bride in a few minutes, and went out the front door. The guests were still in the garden, confused and impatient, talking in small groups about the inexplicable delay. When Maya appeared, someone shouted, "The bride, wait, why is she wearing jeans?" Maya didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't give explanations. She went straight to the Uber that Sophie had called, which was waiting discreetly at the side entrance of the property. Got in the back seat, gave the driver the address with a voice that trembled only slightly. And as the car pulled away from the Ashton mansion, leaving behind a wedding that wouldn't happen and a life she wouldn't live, Maya Hayes finally allowed the tears to fall. Tears of relief, of terror, and of hope. Of 5 years of unresolved pain finally finding its way out. She was going to meet the ghost of her past. She was going to get the answers she deserved. And maybe, just maybe, she would find her way back to herself in the process.
Yeah, definitely no one can deny that Maya has courage, but is the way back really what she would like?
Chapter 3. The Truth. 5 Years of Hell.
I never abandoned you.
The address Damien had scribbled on the paper led to one of the most expensive buildings in the city, a tower of glass and steel that sliced through the downtown financial district, sky like a gleaming blade. Maya stared out the Uber window while the driver navigated through traffic, and 3 times she almost asked him to turn around. The first time, they were 10 minutes from the Ashton mansion. The second time, they were entering the building's parking garage. The third time, she had already gotten out of the car and was standing in front of the glass doors, looking at her distorted reflection and wondering if she'd gone completely crazy. But then she thought about Damien wearing the necklace she had given him. 5 years, and he was still wearing it. 5 years, and he had come back. It had to mean something, right? Or she was being an idiot, following a man who had abandoned her to a billionaire's apartment, like a character in a cheap romance novel. "You only live once," she murmured to herself, and entered before she could change her mind again. The lobby was ridiculous. Italian marble, crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her entire gallery, private security that looked her up and down with obvious suspicion. Maya was painfully aware that she looked out of place in jeans and a simple blouse, hair still styled for a wedding, but the rest casual, as if she'd fled a ceremony halfway through, which, technically, was exactly what she had done. "Can I help you?" The security guard approached, tone polite but eyes alert. I'm here to visit someone." Maya showed the paper with the address. "Penthouse." The man frowned, picked up the phone and dialed. "Mr. Reed? There's a young woman here saying that—" Pause. "Yes, sir. Brown hair, green eyes, jeans, yes." He hung up and pointed to the private elevator in the back. "He's expecting you, top floor." The elevator was all mirrored, and Maya avoided looking at her own reflection during the interminable ascent. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear the blood in her ears, and her hands were trembling slightly. She interlaced her fingers to hide it, took 3 deep breaths and tried to remember. She was a 28-year-old adult who deserved answers, not a nervous teenager going on a first date. The elevator stopped with smoothness that cost expensive engineering. The doors opened directly into the apartment, because of course they did, because a private elevator that opens directly into your home is exactly the kind of thing billionaires have. The penthouse was absurd, all glass and open space, with minimalist decor in shades of grey and white that screamed expensive designer. But Maya barely registered the details because her eyes went straight to the figure on the terrace. Damien had his back turned, looking at the city that stretched below like a kingdom he'd conquered. He had taken off his jacket, which was tossed over the leather sofa, and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt to his elbows, revealing forearms that she remembered being thinner, less defined. His hands were resting on the glass railing, and there was tension in his shoulders that suggested he was less calm than he appeared. The elevator door closed behind her with a soft click, and Damien turned. When his eyes met hers, Maya saw relief so profound it almost knocked her down. "Ah, you came." It wasn't a question, but there was wonder in his voice, as if he'd bet everything on a possibility and won against the odds. "You knew I would come," Maya replied, forcing her voice to come out steady, even though her heart was trying to escape from her chest. "Hoped." Damien approached slowly, as if she were a wild animal that could startle and flee at any moment. "Didn't know. You could have decided that a wedding with a rich and stable man was better than answers from a ghost from the past." He stopped a few steps away, maintaining safe space between them. "Maya, where do I start?" Start with why you disappeared. Her voice broke on the last word, 5 years of pain leaking through the cracks in her self-control. 5 years, Damien. 5. Without a word, without explanation, without anything. I thought you had died, or abandoned me. Or maybe both things at the same time. Pain crossed his face, raw and deep. He ran his hand through his hair, messing it up even more, and when he spoke, his voice came out hoarse. I would never abandon you. Never. Maya, I didn't disappear by choice. He took a deep breath as if preparing to dive into deep waters. I was kidnapped. The silence that fell between them was so dense that Maya could feel the physical weight of it on her shoulders. What? 5 years ago? Damien began pacing back and forth, nervous energy needing an outlet. You remember our last night together? Dinner at that small Italian restaurant you loved? The one with candles on the tables that served that pasta with fresh tomato sauce? Maya remembered. God, how she remembered. It had been a perfect night, with Damien more nervous than usual, smiling too much, touching her hand across the table as if she were an anchor. I remember, she whispered. I was going to propose to you that night. Damien stopped pacing and looked at her, raw vulnerability in his eyes. He pulled a chain from his neck, and Maya saw there was a ring hanging there, a white gold ring with a solitaire diamond that gleamed under the apartment lights. I bought it 3 months before, planned everything obsessively, had the speech memorized, had reserved a table with a view, had even rehearsed kneeling without looking like an idiot. He laughed, a bitter and broken sound. I never got to do it. Maya felt tears burning in her eyes. Damien. After dinner, I took you home. You kissed my cheek at the door, said it had been a perfect night, and I stood there like a lovesick idiot watching you go inside. Damien closed his eyes, reliving the memory. I was heading back to my apartment, still rehearsing the speech in my head, thinking that next time I'd be brave enough. Then a black van stopped at the corner. 4 men got out, professionals, equipped, efficient. They dragged me inside before I could scream or fight properly. Oh my God! Maya brought her hand to her mouth. I woke up in a warehouse, tied to a metal chair with my hands behind my back, head throbbing where they'd hit me to knock me out. Damien opened his eyes and there was darkness there, bad memories that would never go away. And Victor Ashton was there, standing in front of me in a $3,000 suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maya felt nausea rising in her throat. Victor, he kidnapped you. Had me kidnapped. A man like him doesn't dirty his own hands. Damien finally approached, sitting on the edge of the coffee table, close enough to touch, but maintaining respectful distance. I had discovered something about his business. I was an investigative journalist, remember? I was working on a big expose about corruption in the construction industry, and the names that came up, Maya, Victor Ashton was involved in everything. Money laundering through phantom projects, fraud in government contracts, bribery of public officials, a scheme that went so deep it could destroy not just him, but dozens of powerful people. And he found out you knew, Maya said, beginning to understand the scale of the story. He found out, and decided to remove me before I could publish anything. Damien looked at his own hands, which were clenched into fists on his knees. He gave me a very simple choice: disappear completely or die. Leave the country, change identities, never contact anyone I knew again, or... He made a throat-cutting gesture. But why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you... Because he showed me photos. Damien raised his gaze, and there was pain so deep there that Maya had to look away. Of you, of Sophie, of your mother. Photos taken that week, of your routines, of the places you frequented. And he said with that calm and polite voice that if I didn't cooperate, if I tried to expose him or return to my life, you 3 would suffer tragic accidents. He was very specific about what would happen, very detailed. Maya felt her legs weaken and had to sit on the sofa before she fell. So you chose to protect you. Damien knelt in front of her, taking her hands between his. Even if it meant you hating me, even if it meant losing you, even if it meant spending the rest of my life knowing you'd think I abandoned you." Tears were glistening in his eyes now. "I'd rather you hated me and were alive than have you back and truly lose you." "Oh, Damien." Maya was crying openly now, tears running down her face uncontrolled. "They put me on a plane to Bangkok that same night, with no money, no documents, nothing but the clothes on my back and the necklace you'd given me." He touched the chain on his neck. "It was the only thing I managed to keep. I hid it inside my shirt and they didn't find it. I spent the first year just surviving, Maya, sleeping in shelters, doing illegal jobs, learning to be invisible. But then I started to rebuild." "How?" Maya asked, her voice coming out strangled. "I learned programming at the public library, started doing freelance work on obscure sites, saved every penny. Made contacts in the tech underworld, people who didn't ask questions about the past. And then I had an idea, an app that would solve a specific problem in the Asian financial market." Damien smiled slightly. "It went viral. Suddenly I had money. I invested in the right startups, bought stocks at the right time, built an empire from scratch with one singular goal: become powerful enough to come back, to truly protect you. To destroy Victor Ashton." Maya looked around the luxurious apartment, at the man kneeling in front of her who seemed to have conquered the entire world. "Why didn't you warn me? A message, anything. He was watching you." Damien squeezed her hands. "The first year you were followed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I hired my own investigators to monitor the situation, and they confirmed it. Any contact from me would put you in immediate danger. So I waited. Monitored you from afar, through third parties, through photos that investigators sent. And Maya," his voice got darker, "I saw you meet Philip." Maya felt something icy run down her spine. It wasn't a coincidence, was it? No. Victor arranged it. Damien practically spat the words. "He introduced you two at a charity gala, remember? Said he thought you'd have a lot in common. It was planned from the beginning. He wanted you in the family as permanent insurance against me. If I came back, if I tried to expose him, you'd be married to his son. Perfect hostage he could use to guarantee my silence." "That's sick," Maya whispered, feeling bile in her throat. Philip knew. Damien stood up, tension returning to his body. "He was there that night at the warehouse. He held the door while his father threatened me, looked into my eyes and did nothing while they dragged me away. And then, months later, he courted you knowing exactly who you were to me, knowing what his family had done." Maya felt anger beginning to boil, mixed with nausea. "He never loved me." "No, it was a transaction. You were pretty, talented, the right kind of family to impress his social circles, and bonus, you were the perfect tool to control a man who could destroy the Ashton Empire." Damien turned to her. "They bought you, Maya. Paid your bills, saved your gallery, funded Sophie. Trapped you in a web of emotional and financial debts. And I let them," Maya said, her voice coming out broken. "I was so tired of fighting, so desperate for stability that I just let them buy me." "You were surviving," Damien corrected, kneeling in front of her again. "With the resources you had, without knowing the truth, it's not your fault." "How did you come back?" Maya asked, wiping the tears. "How did you manage to come back without Victor killing you?" Damien smiled, and there was something predatory there. "Because in the last 5 years, I didn't just make a fortune. I collected evidence, hired the best private investigators in the world, hacked systems, intercepted communications, bought information from people Victor had betrayed over the years. I have a complete dossier on every crime he's committed in the last 20 years. Documents, recordings, financial records, witnesses, enough proof to send him to federal prison for the rest of his miserable life. And Philip as an accomplice." "Why didn't you go to the police immediately?" "Because I was waiting for the right moment. The moment of maximum impact, maximum humiliation." Damien touched her face, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "And when I found out the wedding was scheduled, that Victor was finally going to manage to trap you in his family permanently, I knew it was time. Wedding day, perfect moment to appear, reveal everything, destroy their plans." But, Maya asked, seeing something more in his eyes, but when I saw you in that dress... Damien closed his eyes, his breathing coming out irregular. When I saw you about to marry him, when I realized I was going to truly lose you this time, not to death or distance, but to your choice, I stopped caring about the plan, about revenge, about justice. I just wanted you back, Maya. Even if you hated me, even if you never forgave me, I needed you to know the truth before you tied your life to monsters. Maya was trembling, 5 years of repressed emotions finally finding an outlet. I need time, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, to process all of this. You came back from the dead, destroyed my wedding, revealed that my fiancé was a monster who helped kidnap you, told me I was bought as insurance against you. I know it's a lot. Damien stepped back, giving space. And I don't expect anything from you, Maya. I just wanted you to know the truth, that you're safe now. I have lawyers ready, security hired. Victor can't touch you anymore without devastating consequences. You're free. And you? Maya stood up, looking into his eyes. Can you hurt me? The question hung in the air between them, heavy and important. Damien took a long moment to answer, and when he spoke there was brutal honesty in his voice. I can, because I love you so much it physically hurts sometimes, because 5 years away from you was worse than torture, and losing you again now that I'm so close will destroy me in ways that kidnapping and exile never could. He took a step back. But Maya, I'd rather lose you knowing you're safe and free to make your own choices than have you trapped in a lie or in a relationship you don't want. Maya looked at the man in front of her. The boy she had loved had become something stronger, more dangerous, more complex. But the essence was still there, in the way he looked at her, in the vulnerability he tried to hide, in the necklace he'd carried for 5 years, like a promise. I need to go, she said finally. I need to think, process, understand what I do with all of this. However long you need, Damien replied immediately. I waited 5 years. I can wait longer. Maya went to the elevator door, pressed the button. But then she stopped, turned, and before she could think better of it, crossed the distance between them in 3 steps. She took his face between her hands and kissed him, desperate, 5 years of longing and pain and unresolved love in a single contact. Damien froze for half a second of shock, then melted into her, arms wrapping around her waist and pulling her against his body, deepening the kiss with 5 years of hunger. It was a kiss that said everything words couldn't. Promise and forgiveness and possibility mixed together. When they finally separated, both were trembling, breathing hard, foreheads touching. I love you, Maya whispered against his lips. I loved you every day of those 5 years. Loved you while I was with Philip. Loved you when I thought you were dead. And I'll love you for the rest of my life, Damien Reed. Maya. His voice came out broken, too full of emotion. But I need time, she continued, stepping back before she could change her mind. To process, to understand who I am now, outside of Philip and Victor's shadow, to be sure I'm making the right choice for the right reasons. I understand. Damien held the ring on his neck. And I'll be here waiting, always. Maya entered the elevator, and as the doors began to close, she saw him standing there, holding the ring he bought 5 years ago, looking at her as if she were the sun, and he had spent years in the dark. And for the first time in a long time, Maya Hayes felt hope. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. Ashtons Fall.
It's over.
The next few days were absolute chaos, the kind Maya had only seen in movies about political scandals and the fall of empires. But this time it wasn't fiction on a screen. It was real life unfolding at a frightening speed, and she was stuck in the center of the hurricane whether she wanted to be or not. Day 1 started with news that Sophie brought running to their apartment, phone in hand and eyes wide. Turn on the TV, now. Any news channel. Maya obeyed, still in pajamas at 10 in the morning because she hadn't been able to sleep properly since returning from Damien's penthouse, and the image that appeared on the screen made her heart stop. Damien Reed, impeccable in a dark grey suit, was entering the federal police building surrounded by expensive lawyers and camera flashes. The caption read, "Billionaire presents evidence of high-level corruption." "Oh my God," Maya whispered, sitting on the sofa with force that made the springs complain. The reporter explained with the animated voice of someone who knew they had a scoop. Damian Reed, CEO of Reed Technologies and one of the most successful businessmen of the last decade, arrived just minutes ago at the FBI with what sources describe as a complete dossier on a corruption scheme involving prominent figures in the construction and urban development industries. Among the names cited is Victor Ashton, magnate and patriarch of the Ashton family. Sophie sat next to her sister, taking her hand. "He's doing it. He's really doing it." Maya couldn't respond, eyes glued to the screen as Damian disappeared inside the building, carrying a thick folder that probably contained 5 years of meticulous work, 5 years of evidence, 5 years preparing for this moment. Day 2 was when everything truly crumbled. Maya woke up to her phone exploding with notifications, and when she checked the news, she saw the headline that was everywhere. "Magnate Victor Ashton arrested for corruption, fraud, and kidnapping." The images were surreal, Victor being escorted by federal agents, hands cuffed behind his back, the face that always emanated power and control now pale and defeated. Reporters shouted questions he ignored, and Maya saw genuine fear in his eyes when the squad car doors closed. The Ashton empire began to crumble in real time. Stocks plummeted 60% in the first hour of trading. Business partners issued statements distancing themselves from the family. Contracts were cancelled. The mansion where Maya almost got married was surrounded by media vans and onlookers. And Philip, poor pathetic Philip, was also indicted as an accomplice, dragged from his apartment in handcuffs while neighbors filmed with their phones. "They deserved it," Sophie said, chewing cereal and watching the coverage like it was a TV series. "Totally deserved it." Day 3, the media found Maya. She was leaving the grocery store with shopping bags when a news van stopped in front, a reporter jumping out with a microphone and camera. Miss Hayes, you were going to marry Philip Ashton. How do you feel knowing your fiancé's family kidnapped and threatened Damian Reed? Did you know anything? Are you still in contact with Philip?" Maya froze like an animal caught in headlights, bag slipping from her hands, unable to form words. Another reporter appeared out of nowhere. "Is it true that Damian Reed was your boyfriend before he disappeared? Have you gotten back together? Did he do all this for you?" Sophie appeared like an avenging angel, placing herself between the cameras and her sister. "No comment. Leave her alone." She grabbed the bags, pulled Maya into the building, and when they finally locked the apartment door, Maya collapsed on the floor and cried from pure emotional exhaustion. "Stay here," Sophie ordered, tone leaving no room for discussion. "Don't answer the door, don't answer unknown phone calls, I'll take care of everything." And Sophie took care of it. She blocked numbers, ignored calls, even yelled at a persistent reporter who tried to bribe the doorman. But there was one call she always put through to Maya, always with a mischievous little smile that her older sister pretended not to see. Damian called every day, not to pressure, not to talk about the case, just to check in. "Did you eat today? Is Sophie taking care of you? Do you need anything? Security? A lawyer? Food delivery from places reporters won't intercept? Why are you being so kind?" Maya asked on the third night, lying in the dark of her room with the phone pressed against her ear. "Because I love you," Damian replied simply. "And love isn't just big dramatic gestures like destroying a corrupt empire. It's asking if you ate. It's caring if you're okay. It's being here, even when you need space." Maya felt something melt in her chest, something that had been frozen for a long time. Day 5. Philip tried to make contact. He showed up at their building, getting past the reporters who still surrounded the area like vultures waiting for carrion. Sophie answered the intercom, and her voice came out icy. "She doesn't want to talk to you." "Sophie, please, I just need to explain." Philip's voice was desperate, pathetic. "Explain what?" Sophie cut him off. "That you helped your psychopath father kidnap the man she loved? That you knew everything and still courted her, proposed to her, almost tied her to a life of lies?" She laughed without humor. "You're a monster, Philip, and monsters don't deserve second chances." She hung up the intercom and blocked his number too. Maya, who had heard everything from the living room, hugged her sister. "Thank you." "Always," Sophie replied. "That's what sisters are for." Day 7. Victor's trial began, and it was a spectacle that dominated every news channel. The evidence Damien presented was devastating, meticulous, impossible to refute. Videos showing Victor discussing illegal payments, audio recordings of threats, financial documents proving money laundering through 12 shell companies, witnesses Victor had betrayed over the years who now came back to bury him. The prosecutor built a case so airtight that even Victor's expensive lawyers couldn't find loopholes. Maya watched from home, Sophie beside her with popcorn as if it were a movie. When the judge announced the verdict, 25 years in federal prison for Victor and 5 years for Philip as an accomplice, she felt something strange. Relief, yes. Justice, certainly. But also emptiness, because after all this had been her life, the future she almost had, and seeing it all crumble was liberating and terrifying at the same time. "It's over," Sophie said when the final credits rolled, metaphorically speaking. "The monsters are locked up. You're free, Maya." "Then why don't I feel free?" Maya asked, her voice small. Sophie turned to her with that look of a younger sister who was sometimes wiser than she should be. "Because you still haven't made the choice." "What choice?" "Damien or not Damien?" Sophie took her hand. "Maya, he did everything for you. Waited 5 years. Built an empire. Destroyed enemies. But he can't live your life for you. You need to decide what you want, not what's sensible or safe or expected." Maya looked at the phone on the coffee table. She knew what she wanted, had always known, since that night 5 years ago when Damien had disappeared and left a hole in the shape of him in her life. She picked up her phone and typed before she could overthink it. "Where are you?" The response came instantly, as if he'd been waiting. "Same penthouse." "Why?" "Maya, getting there in 20 minutes. She didn't change, didn't do makeup, didn't do her hair, went in leggings and an old sweatshirt, hair tied in a messy bun, without a drop of effort, because if Damien loved her, he had to love her like this too, without filters and without pretense. Sophie yelled, "Finally!" when Maya ran past the living room, and she heard her sister laughing as she got on the elevator. The trip to the penthouse was a blur of anxiety and excitement. When she arrived and the elevator door opened directly into his apartment, Maya saw Damien sitting on the sofa with a laptop, hair messy as if he'd run his hands through it 1,000 times, old sweatshirt and bare feet. He looked young like this, like the boy she had loved before the world exploded. When he heard the elevator, he stood up quickly, the laptop almost falling to the floor. "Maya, is everything—" She crossed the room in 6 steps and kissed him, without warning, without preamble, without fear, just 5 years of repressed love finally finding an outlet. Damien froze for half a second of pure shock, then melted into her, arms wrapping around her waist and pulling her against his body, kissing back with intensity that made her knees weaken. They stopped when air became necessary, breathing hard, foreheads touching. "What was that?" Damien asked, voice hoarse and full of hope that barely dared to believe. "I'm sorry," Maya said, hands going to his face, tracing the line of his jaw like she'd dreamed of doing for 5 years. "For making you wait. For doubting. For being afraid." "Maya, you don't need to apologize. I love you." She looked into his grey eyes, into the eyes she had memorized and missed. "I've loved you since I was 21, and you showed up at that coffee shop with coffee spilled on your shirt. I loved you when you disappeared. I loved you while I was with Philip, even trying not to. I loved you every second of those 5 years." Tears were running down her face now. "And I'll love you for the rest of my life, Damien Reed. If you still want—" Damien kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. 5 years of pain and hope and impossible love in a single contact. When they separated, he was laughing and crying at the same time. "If I still want. Maya, I built an empire for you. Waited 5 years. Destroyed enemies. My heart hasn't beat right since I lost you." "Then ask me," Maya whispered. "What?" "What you were going to ask 5 years ago, at that Italian restaurant. Ask me now." Understanding gleamed in his eyes. Damien pulled the chain from his neck, took off the ring he'd carried like an amulet and promise for 5 years. And there, in the middle of the penthouse living room, without elaborate plans or expensive restaurants, he knelt. Maya Hayes. His voice trembled. I love you at your best and at your worst. I love you when you're happy and when you're broken. I love you enough to disappear for 5 years if it means keeping you safe. And I'll love you for the rest of my life. He held the ring between them. Will you marry me? For real this time? Without threats, without fear, without psychopath family? Just us. It's always been just us. Yes. Maya pulled him to his feet, laughing through the tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Damien put on the ring, and it fit perfectly because it was always hers. And when they kissed again, both felt for the first time in 5 years that they were complete.
Finally, now we'll have a real wedding in this story. And I know you were waiting for that, right?
Chapter 5. The Real Wedding. Finally.
Always you.
3 months later, Maya Hayes was in front of the mirror again, but this time everything was different. The dress was simple, in silk crepe that fell softly to her feet, without expensive lace or imported pearls, exactly as she had wanted from the beginning. Her hair was loose in natural waves, small flowers intertwined instead of an elaborate updo. And when she looked at her own reflection, she finally recognized the woman looking back. There was light in her eyes, a genuine smile on her lips, and happiness that shone from the inside out. Stop crying, Sophie. You're going to ruin your makeup, Maya said, but she was smiling when she turned to her sister. I can't. Sophie wiped the tears with the back of her hand, mascara already halfway smudged. You look so beautiful, and it's a real wedding this time. And I always knew you and Damien were meant to be, and... She sobbed again. Breathe, Maya laughed, hugging her sister. You're my maid of honor. You need to be able to walk to the altar without falling apart. No promises, Sophie sniffled, but she was smiling too. The garden where they would have the ceremony was small, intimate, decorated with wildflowers and suspended lights that would glow when the sun set. Only 20 people, close family and friends who really mattered. No hundreds of guests who barely knew the bride and groom. No expensive orchestras or 5-tier cake. Just genuine love and people who truly cared. At the improvised altar under an arch of white flowers, Damien Reed was having a silent existential crisis. He had faced kidnapping, exile, built an empire from scratch, destroyed powerful enemies, but now, waiting for Maya to walk to him, his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dude, relax, his best friend and best man said, patting him on the shoulder. She already said yes. She already has the ring. She's going to show up. What if she changes her mind? Damien whispered, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. What if she realizes she can do better than a man who disappeared for 5 years? What if... The music began, a soft piano version of the song that played at that Italian restaurant 5 years ago, and Damien forgot how to form words. Sophie appeared first, still trying to control her tears, and then Maya emerged at the garden entrance, and the entire world stopped. She was radiant. A smile lit up her whole face, eyes shining with happy tears, and when she looked at him, Damien felt his heart explode in his chest. She walked slowly, unhurried, savoring each step. And when she finally reached the altar and took his hands, she whispered, "Hi." "Hi," he whispered back, voice hoarse with emotion. "You look... I don't have words." "You too." Maya squeezed his hands, feeling the slight tremor. "Ready for this?" "Ready since 5 years ago." The officiant smiled, beginning the ceremony with words about love that overcomes impossible obstacles, about couples who find their way back to each other against all odds. But Maya barely heard, eyes locked on Damien's, seeing 5 years of pain and hope reflected there, seeing the future they could finally build together. "The bride and groom have prepared personal vows," the officiant announced, and Maya felt butterflies in her stomach. She went first, taking a deep breath. "Damien Reed, you gave up everything for me. Spent 5 years in hell just to keep me safe. built an empire just to be able to come back, carried a ring around your neck as a promise you never broke, even when the whole world was against you. Tears were running down her face now, and I promised to spend the rest of my life showing you it was worth it. Every second of suffering, every moment of loneliness, every sacrifice you made. I've loved you since I was 21. I loved you every day you were away, and I'll love you until my last breath. Damien was crying openly now, tears running down his face without shame. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, laughed at himself, and began his vows with a voice that trembled on the first word. Maya, you're my home. You always have been. When I was lost on the other side of the world, sleeping in places I dare not describe, working to exhaustion just to survive one more day, thinking of you kept me alive. Thinking of coming back to you gave me purpose when everything seemed impossible. He held her face between his hands. And now that I'm here, holding your hand, promising my life, making the vows I should have made 5 years ago, I swear I'll never let you go. Never again. No matter what happens, what storms come, what challenges we face, you and me always, I promise. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, a huge smile on his face. You may kiss. Damien was already kissing her before the sentence finished, pulling Maya against his chest and kissing with 5 years of pent-up love, finally free. The guests erupted in applause and cheers. Sophie was sobbing loud enough to be heard over everything, and when they finally separated, both were laughing and crying at the same time. Finally, Maya whispered against his lips. Finally, Damien agreed. The reception was everything the Ashton wedding wouldn't have been. Small, chaotic in an adorable way, full of genuine laughter and palpable love. Simple tables decorated with flowers from the local market, homemade food made by Maya's mother, music playing from a playlist they put together themselves. No ostentation or pretense, just people in love celebrating a love that was almost destroyed but survived against all odds. Sophie made the toast, standing up with a glass of champagne and a huge smile. To my sister, and the most stubborn and passionate man I've ever met. Damien, you literally crossed through hell and back for her. Built an empire, destroyed villains, did things that sound like a movie script. And Maya, you waited. Even without knowing if he'd come back, even thinking he'd abandoned you, part of you never gave up. She raised her glass. You deserve all the happiness in the world. And Damien, welcome to the family. Officially this time, without kidnappings or threats. Everyone laughed and toasted, and Damien squeezed Maya's hand under the table. Am I dreaming? If you are, I am too. And I don't want to wake up. The first dance was magical. Same song that played at that Italian restaurant. The song that should have been the soundtrack to the marriage proposal that never happened. Damien held Maya close, swaying slowly, and when she rested her head on his shoulder, he whispered, You remember. I remember everything. Every moment with you is engraved here. He touched his chest, over his heart. And now we have the rest of our lives to make new moments. Better ones, without fear, without separation, without anything stopping us. Promise? Promise. When the night ended and the guests left, Damien and Maya were alone in the garden, lights still glowing softly, flowers swaying in the night breeze. They danced one more time without music, just the sound of each other's breathing and the synchronized beating of two hearts that had finally found their way back home. 1 year later, Maya was standing in the center of her gallery. The gallery she had managed to open with investment from Damien, but insisted on paying back with growing profits. The space was beautiful, white walls displaying art from emerging local artists, natural light coming through the large windows, and in the center, in a place of prominence, hung a new work, hers. The first painting she had done in 6 years. It was a portrait of two figures, a man and a woman separated by an enormous distance on a large canvas. Between them, stretched and thin but never breaking, a red thread connected them, a direct reference to the Japanese legend of the red thread of fate, the idea that people destined to be together are connected by an invisible thread that can never be cut, no matter how much time passes or how much distance separates them. The title was on a small plaque below, 5 years apart forever together. The gallery door opened and Damien entered, jacket thrown over his shoulder, sleeves rolled up after a long day of work. When he saw the painting, he stopped, and something passed across his face. Admiration, love, gratitude. "It's us," he said, approaching slowly. "It's us," Maya confirmed, leaning against him when he reached her side. 5 years apart, but the thread never broke. "It could never break," Damien put his arm around her waist. "You started painting again. You made me feel alive again. Made me remember who I was before I gave up on my dreams." She turned to him. "Thank you for waiting, for fighting, for never giving up on us." "Maya, look at me." Damien held her face, intense and serious grey eyes. "If I had to do it all over again, every second of suffering, every moment of loneliness, every sacrifice, every night crying from missing you, every day waking up on the other side of the world without you, I would do it 1,000 times. Because ending up here with you, building a life together, painting again, truly smiling, it was worth every tear, every pain, every terrible moment. Everything was worth it." "You don't have to," Maya whispered, touching her forehead to his. "Because we'll never be separated again. Promise? Promise." They stood like that in the middle of the gallery that was her dream finally realized, looking at the painting that told their story. Separation, pain, but in the end, connection, love, victory over the impossible. Because some loves are too strong to be destroyed, even by 5 years of hell, even by psychopath billionaires and elaborate schemes, even by a lifetime trying to separate them. Some loves are simply inevitable, and theirs always was.
And hello, this is Rowan again. And I wanted to share with you what it was like to write this story. And I'll say right away, writing this story was an emotional roller coaster. The scene that moved me the most was when Damien reveals he carried the ring for 5 years. I cried while writing and had to pause. Fun fact, originally Victor was going to be less of a villain, but the more I wrote, the more I hated him and let my anger flow into the scenes. The kiss in Chapter 3 was rewritten 3 times until I captured the right intensity without being too explicit. Maya and Damien talked to me for weeks before I started. They practically dictated their own dialogue. The red thread painting in the epilogue? Last-minute inspiration at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep thinking about the perfect ending. Sophie stole the scene being the protective sister we all deserve to have. Balancing drama, romance, and touches of comedy was challenging but rewarding. This story proves that true love survives the impossible. Thank you for taking this journey, and if you want another unforgettable story, click on the video showing up on your screen right now, and I'll see you there.